am calling the Davie County Board of Education special call meeting work session. I will begin with our invocation. I need to share with you before that how excited I am to see this many people here. And I want to thank our technology staff for moving to here, to the Senior Service Center, because it is better equipped for you to see what we're about to present to you. I also had the opportunity this morning, as thinking about this meeting and how important it was, to go into my church library, and I pulled a book. The book copyright is 1884, and the date on it was 2/19. Please join me in the invocation. As we gather this evening, I ask this board to be mindful of the business we are about to undertake. We are thankful for everyone in attendance this evening. Father, we are thankful for the opportunity to govern and the freedoms that we enjoy. We've also gathered tonight to build the future for the county that we love. Give us strength to gather calmly the information we need to guide our decision. Please help us to find the solutions that will renew the future of our county. As always, we seek wisdom to make the best decisions for the students and all the citizens of Davie County. Peace be with you. At this time, I would like for Jeff Wallace to lead us in the pledge. I now need a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Mr. Ridenhour makes the motion. I need a second. Mr. Fuller seconds. All in favor of adopting the agenda, please show by the raise of hand. 7-0. Before we begin this evening, I want to share with you the protocol that we're going to use. Our superintendent will share with you some information. Our architects will share the schematic design for the high school and cost, as well as the repurposing design and cost. Our superintendent will then have a summary. Each board member has at their side a sheet of paper, it's the principal in me, I'm sorry, with lines drawn for them to write their questions down as they hear or have questions throughout the presentation. When we finish the presentation, we will be able to ask questions. And remember, this is a work session, so there's no public comment at a work session. But on March the 5th, when we as a board will make our decision, public comment is always welcome at our regular board meetings. So that is March the 5th. As you recall, work sessions, we have no public comment. At this time, I am going to turn this over to Dr. Hartness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and to see so many people interested in this topic tonight. I want to thank the Board of Education for moving our meeting to this location tonight to accommodate more of our citizens. I want to also recognize and thank two of our county commissioners who are here tonight, Mr. Mark Jones, Mr. Terry Reniger. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Appreciate you being here tonight. I want to thank our community, our parents, and it's wonderful to see so many of our students who are here tonight who are interested in this topic. As we frame this conversation tonight, I wanted to share just a couple thoughts with you and the board before we get started. I've had the pleasure of serving as your school superintendent for the last 19 months, and during those 19 months, I've done a lot of listening, and I feel like it's best to sit back and listen to all sides of our public issues, and I've done a lot of that in the last 19 months. I've heard a lot of positive things about our community, and I better understand some of the challenges that we face as well. I will tell you the single most talked about issue in public and public issue we have in our community is what is the future of Davie County High School. Folks, the high school issue has been a political football. It has been at times a political grenade that has divided our community. And in some cases, it has divided families and friends. And I'm convinced that no issue is too big for us not to solve together. And no issue should continue to divide our community from this point forward. So what brought us to where we are tonight? Last spring, the board asked us to conduct a facilities assessment, and part of that assessment is interviews with people across our community. And what we heard from the people that were interviewed is they're tired of talking about this issue and they want a solution. That was the result of that facilities assessment. When we started our strategic planning to talk about the future of Davie County schools, the academic goals that we want to accomplish, the facilities that we want to have for our students in the future, the very first issue that came up was what some called and many called the elephant in the room, the issue that we're here to talk about tonight. It was unanimous that the issue be addressed. This problem has been discussed from every angle. If there's been an idea out there, I believe someone has discussed it. What I would challenge everyone, the board and our community, to do is to continue to respect each other's opinions, but to also look outside of the lens that we focus on every day. And let's stop focusing on the problem, and let's as a community embrace the solution for the common good of our citizens, our children, and future generations. What I have observed over the past 19 months is that we all have much more in common than we have in differences. How many people in this room tonight attended a public school? I think we understand the value of public education. We have very similar values, even though some of us, some of you, we all have our personal preferences, and some of us put more emphasis on certain values than others. During our planning for what we're going to present tonight, our architects did a fantastic job of determining and listening to the values of our community, the values of our students, the values of our staff. And tonight our architects are bringing to you not more problems, but rather some solutions and options that can benefit our entire community, solutions that will have a lasting positive impact on children, adults, economic development, and solutions that are aligned to the common values to those involved in this extensive process. Our strategic plan, and I hope all of you will have a chance to see our strategic plan. It's posted on our website, and we've distributed it over the past 2 weeks. It outlines a vision for our school district to be the national model. Being a national model is more than settling for what was good for us when we attended public school, as so many of you indicated you did. But it's more in looking into the future and investing in future generations. Last year in our facilities assessment, our demographer indicated that our population growth in Davie County had stalled, that young adults are not coming back to our community. The solutions being presented here tonight can make Davie County an even more attractive place to live and to work and to live together, and it can change the forecast of our future populations. The solutions presented here tonight can become a reality if we will all put our differences aside and work together. I want to welcome our architects, Mr. Clark Pierce, Wesley Curtis, Scott Miller, who are here tonight to share with you solutions that they have based on their expertise, their experience, and their interviews with our community, our staff, and our students. And I will come back when they finish up and try to wrap up and summarize where we are and some potential next steps for the board to take. So, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to our architects. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. I'm going to apologize from the outset. I have a scratchy throat this evening, and so I've got some water here. Hopefully I don't spill it on the technology, and hopefully I don't hear any quips about just like Senator Rubio either. But it is an exciting time for us. It's an exciting time for the county. We're pleased to be here this evening to explain to you what we have brought as a solution for the county, for the high school, and for the site where the current high school is. We've been involved with a lot of discussions with staff, with community leaders through all aspects of this project, both the new school and for the existing site. I think in speech class they tell you you're supposed to tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. Dr. Harkness is going to tell everybody what we told you or what he thinks we told you. These are the steps that we're going to go through tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the programming process. Programming process, for those of you who are not architects or may not be familiar with that term, is where we gather information from the stakeholders to determine exactly what the needs are, and then we try to put that into 2- and 3-dimensional forms through both the drawings and the built project. That process, in this case, involved a 2-day fairly intensive interview of a number of staff members at the existing high school site. And if I can find the right paper here, I'll just give you some idea of those different groups that we interviewed in that process. That included administrative staff, athletic and physical education staff, career technical education staff, English staff, fine arts and foreign language, ROTC, math, media and technology, science, social studies, STEM, student services. We had some parent representatives that came in, PTA representatives and others. And then we had participation from the students. We had leadership classes. We had a variety of different curriculum classes come through and talk to us about what they saw the needs for this school to be and what some of the deficiencies of those existing spaces are. They had an opportunity to see what we planned 3 years ago, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, because there are a lot of differences between what was planned 3 years ago and what is being planned now, particularly in terms of program requirements and how they differ. So that was a 2-day process. We went back and assembled that information into basically a graphic form that set out, based on what we had heard, what certain space requirements were in terms of size and number of spaces. And then we put that in a program document that we presented to what I'm going to call the executive staff, which I think most of you know on the board, but consists of Dr. Harkness, Jeff Wallace, Jenda Haynes, and Michael Spillman. So they reviewed that, and any time that you put together a program and you're starting to do something new, there's always a few things in there that maybe are just wish things. You don't really need them, but they're like to haves, and you have to sift through some of that, determine what the real needs are. So with the help of staff, that process was done. We're going to talk to you tonight, first of all, about the new Davie High School plans. Through that process, the new square footage that resulted was 328,800 square feet. The initial high school 3 years ago was 212,000 square feet in round figures. One of the big differences in that square footage number alone has to do, again, with, as I mentioned, the program requirements for that site. Initially, that high school was to be designed for 1,700 students because the existing campus was not being closed. It was going to be continued to be used as some AP classes, some CTE curriculum courses, and the athletic endeavors of the high school. So all of those together, when you put them on one site for a new centrally located Davie High School resulted in added square footage. Some of those areas that increased the square footage requirements have to do with the CTE programs, and there's a pretty large increase in those requirements alone. Probably the largest increase of any of the space increases. In addition to that, we were tasked to increase all of the common or core spaces, which would include the gymnasium, the media center, the dining area. So those are some of the large areas that we had to increase in size, because this new high school is to meet an initial capacity of 1,800 students, plus or minus. That's roughly what you have enrolled at the high school now. It is to have core support space to accommodate 2,000 students. So we have to design all the larger spaces to accommodate that. So in addition to the CTE curriculum, the gymnasium had to increase in size to accommodate 2,000 spectators instead of the 1,500 that were originally designed. In addition, the 2010 model did not have an auxiliary gym. It was decided at that point in time not to include that. It could be added later. And again, remember that the athletic programs were going to remain on the existing campus. So there are 2 gyms on the existing campus. There was not a need to have an auxiliary gym on this campus at that time. In addition to that, so now there's an auxiliary gym included, and it's to seat about 400, I believe, is what we designed it for. So it's not that much different from the current auxiliary gym. In addition to that, through our interviews with staff and students and parents, we heard that there was a need for a wrestling space. So there is a wrestling space in this new facility. It's not a full-size gym, but it's certainly large enough to accommodate wrestling practices. We also heard very loudly from staff that we want the classrooms to be larger. The original plan had classrooms in the 750 range, plus or minus. The state standard is 750 to 850. The number we kept hearing from staff, we want 850 square foot classrooms. This plan encompasses 850 square feet per general classroom. There are 69 classrooms, general classrooms, in this new facility. I believe there are 12 science classrooms. We have a number of smaller resource rooms that we like to call it. In addition to that, we heard we would like to have larger science classrooms. The state standard for those science classrooms basically are 1,200 square feet for physics, physical science, biology, and earth sciences. Chemistry is a 1,500 square foot recommendation. The original design did not have this size science classroom. Science classrooms are allowed to be smaller by state standards if you can demonstrate that you can accommodate the laboratory requirements and the classroom setup requirements within a smaller space footprint than that. In addition, in early 2010, so far as science classrooms are concerned, the state actually passed a law that required certain things of science classrooms in terms of equipment and setup and that sort of thing. Basically, the state requirements or standards that you hear a lot about are just guidelines, and it's left up to the local educational unit to determine what they can afford and make those decisions. But they did take the science portion of the curriculum out of the local hands, and they have I think it's about a 28-page manual on how to design science classrooms. Probably more information than you wanted to know about science classrooms. So I think those are sort of the large areas that cause the square footage increase. The repurposing of the existing high school site we will talk about later, because we have Scott Miller here that was intimately involved with the design of that, and he was involved with the community meetings that we held to determine, what some of the potential uses for that site might be. And then at the end, we'll talk about project construction schedule. I'm sure what everybody wants to hear, we'll talk a little bit about cost.
Thank you, Clark. Now for the fun part. It was throughout this process, certainly we as architects were really excited about the possibility of not only just coming up with a design, but working with staff, students, other individuals that help us shape what the plan will actually be and how it flows. One of the things that we found that was very important that we were happy that the staff and the board decided to do was to just visit other schools. Take a look at spaces to see actually what they felt like, how large they were, how traffic flowed, so you could get a good idea of what you would like to have in your own school. So we did that, and we took a tour of several schools, some here in town, most of those. We looked at the Walkertown prototype. We looked at the Reagan prototype. We also looked at a prototype in Charlotte at, I think it was Rocky River. Mm-hmm. And during those tours, there were a lot of things that continued to reoccur as we thought about what do we really need in a plan? What do we really need in a school? How large does the corridors need to be? How does it really flow? One of the things that we did as we present this plan was to try to take all of those ideas, all of the things that we found that staff supported, that the board looked at, that they saw that they liked or saw that they needed for that matter, and tried to incorporate that within a plan. So what I'd like to do is just kind of show you, I hope that it's not too light up here for you to kind of see. Thank you. That's much better. Much better. Start with the overall site plan. This is the site on Farmington Road, and this location here, this is Farmington Road here. This is the existing middle school there. And you can see on the site this is the location for the new high school itself. The high school is set so that we've designed it so that the wings obviously are facing, the classroom wings need to be facing north and south, so we take advantage of solar activity. Also, you can see here that we've designed the layout for the parking. This is the main student parking that would occur along here, pretty much like the layout that we had in the original new Davie plan. There are approximately, overall, 1,200 parking spaces on the site. You can see here now, this is a little different than the last Davie plan. We did not have the stadium. The stadium would be located here. The size of this, you'd have an 8-lane track, and the seating capacity is approximately 4,500 seats. Also, you can see at the end we've shown here concessions, a placeholder for a potential field house as well. The thing that we like about the parking and how everything lays out is that it is generally distributed throughout the site. You've got a lot of parking here with the student. This would be where the staff and visitors would come into the new building. This is the main entry to the building. You can see we've got a covered walkway that comes along here that allows students to come along this boulevard here. This is the main student entry, so that in the mornings they come in and they all can flood in that direction to go into the side of the building. And then once the certain hours are, I guess, entrance hours are over, the doors could be locked, and everyone would have to come into this canopy cover here into the main entry. That way you control access to the building. We continue to hear security as a major concern throughout the entire process, and we feel like this plan certainly addresses that. You also have parking along this side here and over. This is, of course, the middle school bus there. This is, of course, their parking as well. But the thing, as I said earlier, we liked about the way the parking is distributed is that during a large event like a game, you have parking that is sort of distributed around the entire stadium. So you've got good joint use parking for a major event. Part of this development would also include development of softball fields, which would be here. You've got there's an existing field there that would be renovated to be a regulation size softball. Also baseball here would be renovated to be a regulation size baseball field. There's tennis courts. There's 4 existing courts here now. We would add 4 more courts for a total of 8 tennis courts. And so you can see here with your track, field, and an additional track and field areas that long jump and that could happen off to the side as well. The thing that we also like about the plan is it allows you easy access around the perimeter of the building, not only for access to the vocation or the CTE component, but also for fire access for fire trucks, so that they have easy access around the building for any other sorts of emergencies as well. Off to the east here, you can see practice fields, and you'll see later on the plan the changing or the locker room areas for the PE as well as sports is at this location here, so that you have easy access or quick access from the locker rooms to the practice fields. This is a sort of an enlargement of that same plan to kind of give you a better feel for some of the spaces. Obviously, we're in schematic design, and as we go further into the design, if we go further into the design, we would work out a lot of other details like size of sidewalks and where they really intersect and those various other aspects that we would fine-tune. But this kind of gives you an overall picture of how traffic would flow. You can kind of see here again student parking, a promenade so students could have a common access to come into, go into the building there. There's, as the bus access happened here, they also have the access to that common canopy that would lead them into the building here. And as I said earlier, once the doors are closed in the mornings or there's a need for security, those could be closed off, which moves everybody to come to the main entry right there here at the very front. To kind of orient you just from a bird's eye perspective, this area here, and I'll show you plans a little later. This area here is the auditorium. This area here is the main gym. This area here is the auxiliary gym. This area here are the locker areas that support the gym spaces. This area here is basically your wrestling. Admin is located right here at the front, so they have easy control for access for persons coming in and out of the building. And then you have a corridor on either side, here and here, that helps disperse pedestrian traffic from the main building here to the classroom tower. And from the classroom tower, you can see you could come in here and here. This is a 3-story tower, and you're actually coming in on the ground floor. So you would go in on the first level and go up 2 levels to the other classroom facilities. Directly to To the back here, we have the CTE. This space basically houses your auto tech, your carpentry, and your ag classes. So I think the way the building lays out, it allows it to sit pretty close to the layout that we had previously for the Davie. And there's easy access around the building to the fields, and there's also place here for future expansion. You could build another tower wing here that could be 1, 2, 3 stories depending on the size you need it to have. And that tower could be as much as an additional 30 classrooms if need be. You can see again, it's kind of oriented the way the site plan was laid out. You can see here the auditorium that I talked about earlier. This is the student entry both here and here into the building. Of course, they could always also come into the main as well, but since the parking is here, those are the 2 areas that they would come in. You've got your auditorium. Again, that's your administration space. This is arts. Arts has its, there are 3 art classrooms there with storage and also access to have an art patio along this side here. And one of the things that we like about this plan and that's incorporated in this plan is that throughout the space, there's lots of natural light. And you'll get a hint of that in some of these. I think I've got some photographs in here. But one of the things that we like as architects and as people like, period, is light in a space. And we try to use as one of our design concepts, we'd like to use light to help orient people in space. So as you're coming down any one of these corridors, as you look down a corridor, you always have a view out so you can see light. And in particular, in this central space where this is the dining here and there, in the central space, there's also clear stories that allow light to come into the interior of the space, which is very light and airy. So you always have a sense of what's going on outside, or at least you know if it's dark or not. And sometimes there are schools you go in and you don't know if it's 8 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But one of the things we really like to emphasize is the use of natural light throughout. Okay, so you've got your dining area here. Part of this scheme shows a sort of a satellite serving line, 2 serving lines here, so everybody's not forced just to go to the main kitchen serving line for that to happen, but it's broken up so it allows you to disperse the traffic flow of students as they're going to lunch. There's approximately 660 seats in the dining area, so that would allow you the changing of basically three periods for dining, which helps with students, gives them a little more time to eat than I think you currently have as you go through that. The other thing that we like about this plan is not only do you have the space for interior dining, but you also have an outdoor patio space as well. And in this plan, it allows you security at the same time while you can eat outside. These corridors on either side are borders to this outdoor dining space. So once you get in the building, you don't have to go, there's no need to go outside of a controlled area to either eat or to do whatever you have to do. The only time you'd have to go outside is if you're going to your CTE classes. And the major reason for that is just because of the types of spaces that they are. You're talking about auto tech, carpentry, those kinds of spaces need a certain amount of separation, so that's why those are located there. Again, you can see the gym, the support area, the locker rooms, which are support areas for your gym. This is the weight room. You have your PE either side there, your sports locker rooms either side here. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear was that students like to take showers. And there are times, there are times where because there's such a short time in changing between classes, it's very difficult to do that, especially if you only have 2 or 3 heads. So one of the things that we did in this plan is we made sure we had plenty of, well, not plenty, we made sure we had a lot more showers located here, and we've got it laid out in such a way that there is access to several showers to allow students to have time to take a shower, change, and then get back to your classes. Out this direction leads you directly to the practice fields, as you look at that. The center core here, or this area here in your tower, represents your other CTE classes, for example, like drafting, food labs are along here. And then this is your special ed classes, self-contained, as we talk, along here on the first floor. So if you had to have easy access to grade, you can as well. And then the rest of the classes that you see here in the center core are your science labs. We try to locate those centrally throughout the classroom tower and the wings. So you'll see four labs there. As we go to the next level up, you'll see the same 4 along the central corridor here. And then the next level up, you'll see the same core of science labs there, because we're trying to be efficient in stacking utilities. And that's one of the things we try to do with our plan, is be as efficient as possible to as far as costs are concerned in constructing utilities. This is the second level, and the second level is where the media center is housed. As Clark mentioned earlier, this media center is designed to accommodate the core of 2,000. So the square footage, obviously, in this plan is a lot more than we had in the original Davie plan. And you can see, again, the classrooms are equally sort of distributed on either side. Staff would be happy to know that there are workrooms on each level as well. We have workrooms along here, workrooms on this side, and also, as Clark mentioned earlier, there are several resource rooms that are sprinkled throughout as well. One of the things that we like on this second level plan is this is a small administrative area, so it sort of gives you a satellite administrative area to control your classroom wings. And that helps out a lot, especially if you happen to be a staff member that is not in really good shape and you're running back and forth between the main back to here. This gives you a satellite place for at least some control for administration. Of course, it's no need of saying throughout the design of the facility that there's plenty of restrooms for students as well as separate restrooms for staff. This is the third level. The third level is one such that what we will eventually work to do, as we've done on our other previous models, is on the tower here will be an opportunity for a green roof. Constantly we're trying to find sustainable, trying to use sustainable principles throughout, so students not only take advantage of a building that is eco-friendly, but it's also, you can use it to teach and train students about sustainability as well. So we try to sprinkle that throughout the facility as well. Again, your science labs here at the core, and then classrooms on either side. These are the exterior elevations of the facility. You can see here when we have not, this is not to say that the color of the brick will be orange or red or whatever, but it gives an opportunity just so that you can kind of see get a feel of the materials. As we go into design development, or when we go into design development, obviously we will do a lot more refining when it comes to color selection. But we had to show something, so this is what you have. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that this facility had that is different from anything else that's out there is something that is a Davie-owned item. And one of the things we like to kind of show that is this orange wall here. That's what we're calling the feature wall. So, and you can see this would have your logo out there, and this would have the name of the school, Davie High, and I've got a better picture of this earlier, so that from the road you can see where the main entry is and get you to that really quickly. So we try to use a lot of wayfinding things like that, as well as things to kind of separate this school to be Davie's own school as we look at that. So again, you can see the northeast-south elevations again. The north As I said earlier, this is a elevation of the north side that shows the 3-story towers, again with windows that are facing on the north and south side with sun control devices to take advantage of, make it as energy efficient as possible. This is your media center here that has windows that look out, out into the green area in the back, as well as you can see here the entry. This is the main entry of the building coming into it. You can see the glass top with the canopy and the canopies that lead you to that spot. This is sort of a bird's eye view. You can kind of see here again, this is the main entry canopy that leads you around to the main entry. That's the feature wall that we talked about earlier. This is a access into the, like I say, the students' access to the building here and there. Again, the classroom wing, and then behind that, you've got the CTE building. CTE building, classroom wing, and your major main level facility. Your access corridors going into the classroom wing. And this is sort of a view of what we think would project that the new entry would be. Again, we haven't refined. Here you see a different colored brick. As I said earlier, we haven't defined what the brick is quite yet, but this gives you an opportunity to say, this is us. This is Davie. This is our entry. It's easy to see from any point on the site, and everyone knows this is the entry. As we talked earlier, I didn't show so much in the plan, but this little entry space here is a vestibule that allows you to go in, and during the hours where students are coming in the morning, they can go through the vestibule, straight through the vestibule into the building. Once the time to come in has passed, then you can go into the vestibule, and the doors are locked just beyond the vestibule, and the only way you can go is into the administration lobby space. So it directs all traffic for security reasons. After a certain period of time, everybody has to go in the vestibule, into the administration office to check in, and then you can go further into the building, just as security measure. And as we further refine the colors and the other detailed features of it, it will just continue to be, hopefully to be a really nice, eye-grabbing elevation as we look at it. Now, some people may say, and this sometimes as you're looking at this screen, you look at it, and if you like, so now, I'm a Tennessee graduate, so this color orange doesn't look bad to me. But my partner is a Clemson graduate, and he goes, well, that's not the right color orange. It needs to be a little darker. Well, obviously, the screen, light, and everything else has to play with what the color orange is. We would envision that color being your Davie color orange. Just so you know. Okay. Here are some shots of perspectives of the north side of the building, and the shot you see here is the entry that leads you from the pedestrian student access parking lot into the building. And you can see here there's a large kind of covered area that gives students plenty of room to, if it's raining or coming in, once they come through the canopies, they come in, they can stage before they go into the building itself. So we try to be very mindful of providing covered space when you have a lot of students that are coming in from the outside, coming into the building. This is a perspective looking inside, interior perspective at the dining area. You can see here, again, this is the dining space. Circulation happens along here. This is the gym access, goes to the gym here. Access into the auditorium is through this way here. And that's a eagle, of course. And then you've got this is the feature wall that I talked about, the orange wall. That wall goes up and it carries on through. Those are the entry doors at the main entry. So it goes on out through this way. This is the area that we talked about earlier as the check-in area. So that once you come through this corridor, that's administration right there. They have plenty of glass that looks through this dining area as well as anybody coming into the building. So once the hour of entering the building has ceased, everyone has to come through that direction for security control. This is the clear story I was telling you about earlier. This is a translucent panels that allows light to flow into this space. It's approximately from here to here, somewhere around around 30 feet. So it's a large open area. These are large fans that help circulate air into space. Energy, again, being energy efficient in how we try to condition the space. That allows you to move air around into space, but there's light coming in along there, as well as above here, light is coming into this two-story space. Whether the columns are orange or whatever, but that's just an idea of how we might show the building. Right now, all of the floors in the main corridors are terrazzo. That's what we've got currently in the bid. So as you look at this, as we develop patterns for the floor, whether that's orange stripe or whatever it might be, this entire floor area for all your major corridors, would be terrazzo. One of the things we wanted to show right quick was just a couple of images. This is an image of one of our prototypes of what you saw of a media center. Though this shows a sort of a layout, your media center would be a lot larger than what we've shown here. I showed this just to get a feel for how it's designed currently in your plan, with the center area that has an arch space that allows natural light on either side to come into the space, as well as having some light at the very end of that to be able to go out and look as well. This is another view here looking back toward the administration of this area. People are controlled here and on the other side as they come into the media center. This is your main admin for the media center there, and their production and everything happens behind that. Here's just another shot of our prototype auditorium space. The space seats approximately 750 seats, with some spaces down front for, again, additional movable seating if necessary. This particular gym and what we've designed in your facility has a flexible space in the back so that it can be closed off if need be for multi-purpose use. One of the things I really like about this plan is we talk about the types of spaces is you've got 5 to 6 other spaces that are just basically kind of multi-purpose spaces, whether it's this auditorium space here or the black box that's in the back that could be used for various multi-purpose use, or whether it's the wrestling space that's a large space that could be used, or your auxiliary gym or your main gym. So you've got a lot of other large spaces that could be used for kind of multi-purpose activities. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Clark.
One detail that I wanted to mention earlier on the plan and the square footage, I wanted to give you just a brief comparison of what square footage for this new facility is compared to what your existing high school would be if it were a conventional high school as opposed to a campus plan. Your existing square footage is 238,325. Now that includes some other spaces that are related to the athletic facilities, primarily press box concessions and that sort of thing. It also includes all of your modulars. Your modulars, obviously, I don't think anybody would argue that that's an optimum classroom arrangement. So if we consider that we included a corridor system and the requisite toilets that would go to support as many modulars as you have, centralized mechanical spaces, all of those sort of things that go into making up a large high school, that square footage would total right, even with your deficiencies, not adding anything else in terms of increasing your cafeteria size, any other deficient spaces, you would total out at 286,000 in round figures. Just a point of comparison. Obviously, when we do the new high school at the new location, we have to do something with the existing high school site. We don't want to leave it just there vacant as a ghost town sort of piece of property. And this is just as exciting, I think, as a new high school potential for what this site can become to the county and to that portion of the county in particular. So we're going to talk a little bit about repurposing the existing site. Scott Miller will have the bulk of this presentation, and I know he's excited about it because when we met with Dr. Harkness and his group, he talked for an hour and a half about it, and I've told him that we don't have an hour and a half for him to talk tonight. Try and keep it as brief, but we don't want to lose the enthusiasm that he has, and we all share for that. Now, the two aspects of the repurposing of the existing site. One of those would be the Davidson County Schools Administration. We foresee Davie, excuse me. Pardon me, Freudian slip. We're working in Davidson County too. They start with a D. This is your existing high school site. The building that we're talking about proposing to repurpose as an administrative use is what's known as the K building. It's basically the Performing Arts building and the Media Center building currently. What this would allow the county school system to do would be to centralize all of their administrative staff. And Dr. Harkness, I'll leave somebody out, I'm sure, but exceptional children, your child nutrition, testing and accountability, basically all of those that are scattered around in some location around the county. And a number of those are on the central campus currently. So that would free up space for the expansion of other programs for the county school system. So we have done a plan that would show potentially how that might look inside that existing K building. I can't remember all the numbers or the letters, excuse me, for the various buildings. I know this is B building, the cafeteria, kitchen is here, the little building up against the gym is the A building, which some classroom space that was converted from original use of band and music areas. I believe this one, the administrative, currently is called a C building, and I'm not sure what all the rest of them are numbered, but in any event, the proposal in the repurposing is for all of those that you see hatched to be demolished, and those would then make room for a reuse of the larger portion of this site. The buildings you see in purple, we plan to keep at this point. The gyms for community use, the cafeteria again for community use, and the kitchen. There may need to be at some point some work done to the kitchen area. We understand it has a few problems in terms of makeup air and exhaust air and those sort of things. But the K building would be the primary building on this campus that the county would use, the county school system. We're not planning for this to be a student instructional site at all. There will not be any students on this site to conflict with whatever the future community use of this property might be. This is how that existing K building might lay out for the school system's administrative needs. We simply took their requirements in terms of all of their various departments and created the number of offices that they said they need with some expansion space. We have not tried to assign different departments within this space. That would be a point of discussion for the superintendent and his administrative staff to work out about who goes where. We have designated a few areas, one being the superintendent's offices. This is where you currently come in off of the parking lot in the front. And this suite of offices is currently, I believe, the guidance offices for the high school. This would be converted into the superintendent's suite. You'd still come into this door here on the side. We'd create some glass along this corridor so that you can have a better control about who's coming in and be prepared for that. But the superintendent's office, a waiting area, a small copy area, and reception desk, and a little office for Gene Brickey right there. A number of offices arrayed along this corridor. What we have done is not created any new access points into the building. The corridor circulation pattern made use of all the existing exterior doors. And, fortunately, it worked out pretty well, I think. One big area that we're reducing in size is the media center, which is a little over 7,000 square feet, and we're arraying some offices and support spaces around the exterior wall there. And then the internal space would be a new board meeting room, training room. If you have some corporate partners, it could even be used by the community as the corporate space as well. And I think there's also an existing display or projection screen along this wall, so we would envision the board being arrayed along this wall and then the community seating for a board meeting out in the rest of the area. We've pretty close on the existing plumbing facilities in terms of toilet needs, but we felt like if we have visitors into the building, we don't want to send them all the way down to the existing toilet, so we've created a new toilet grouping in this location just off the entry and convenient to the board meeting room for board meetings. The office arrangement within the building, again, we tried to eliminate any demolition that was not necessary. So basically, all of the offices that are shown in there and are contained within the confines of the existing interior walls, which in large measure are block walls. So we didn't want to have to do any demolition to walls inside that we didn't have to. So that's going to help, defray some costs that you'd normally see in a renovated building like this. Of course, there'd be new electrical systems, because once you go in and expand something like this for a different use, then you've got ceilings to replace, and the mechanical systems are not set up to handle office use compared to school use, and all those sort of issues would be addressed in this renovation. Now, this is the exciting part. I mean, that's sort of mundane and office space and so forth. Scott's going to talk about the exciting part.
Thank you, Clark. Can everybody hear me okay? Is everybody okay? Everybody holding up so far? Well, my name is Scott Miller. I'm a landscape architect and land planner with MLA, Miller Landscape Architecture. And I'm very pleased to be here. Working with these gentlemen has been great, Dr. Hartness and all the others. It's been a wonderful experience thus far. I am excited about this, and I don't think I talked for an hour and a half. I think it was an hour and 15 minutes maybe at our last meeting. But I am excited about the opportunity here at this location. One of the things I wanted to mention was, and how I got involved in this project was I guess it was last summer sometime, the county actually hired our firm to take a look and get involved in doing a master plan study for parks and recreation throughout the county. And many of you, I'm sure, were aware of that effort. Some of you I'd seen from some of those public input sessions that we've held over the last 6 months. We are getting ready to wrap up that exercise, and back in December we had a great group of folks that actually came out. Clark talked about stakeholders. We had a number of stakeholders in the community, people that just had ideas and interests. Got them together one day or one morning and talked about the different things that could possibly go on at this location as the school changed locations. What could possibly happen here? And so obviously it was a great opportunity for us to merge our ideas and our input that we received during the master plan study also with the opportunity that has arisen here. And so we tried to listen intently to those ideas. What I'm going to show you today is basically 3 concept sketches for that repurposing of this site. And they're not that different, but what I would like to do is go through concept A, B, and C with you. Spend a little bit more time on the initial one in that they are not that different. Basically, the program elements could change from plan to plan. So we'll, on concept B and concept C, just kind of focus in on what the changes were to the overall concept. But this is just a vision at this point in time, and that's one thing that we want everybody to understand. This is not a completed plan. This is not something that is set in stone by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a wonderful opportunity to get the dialogue started and to hear more about the possible recreational opportunities in Davie County. I would like to state also that Parks and Recreation is a benchmark to the quality of life in a community. And I think it's very important for us to recognize that. You have a very, very unique opportunity here. I'll go ahead and switch to the next slide. What we've got here, this is concept A. And I would like to just kind of be your tour guide for the night and take you through and walk you through some of the ideas in this plan. What you're seeing here, obviously, is the school site. And as Clark just went through, this location is the admin building. And what we're proposing to do in this particular plan, and this is kind of an overlay, and to get you oriented, just to make sure everybody's oriented correctly, and I'll try to handle this. Davidson Community College. It's over here. Main Street, all along here. Okay. The existing front parking area to the school right now. Parking lot to the side, right here. I'll show you access points first and foremost, kind of get you oriented. This is this existing bus parking area over here. Okay, the main entrance to the facility right here. And then I'm going to switch slides. I just wanted to show you this on the aerial overlay so you get an idea of what's all around you. There's a residential neighborhood in the rear back here. Basically, this area over here is a little bit of rough terrain, wooded area. And of course, the side street down along this side. This is that same plan without the background information, but make it just a little bit easier for me to explain what's going on. And I may try to use this other pointer just because it might be a little bit easier for me. Let's see, does that work for you guys enough? Okay. What we have here is one of the things that we heard throughout the meeting that we had earlier and that I continue to hear during our public input sessions and stuff is the need for more Little League baseball fields and also softball and some softball fields. What we're showing here is a concept that would try to accommodate some of those. Other things that we heard throughout our investigation is the desire and need for an outdoor swimming pool, possibly a splash park or something like that. So that's one thing that has come out. Obviously, there's never enough gyms. We are proposing to leave both of the gyms. This entire building in this particular scheme would remain. The cafeteria portion of the building would remain. The main entry, covered entry that comes in would remain. And obviously, K building over here would remain for the school system. The way this would be set up would be that there's approximately 85 parking spaces. This parking area would be renovated such that this could serve and have an entry point right there at the rear for the employees of the administration. There would be an area of about 45 parking spaces. These are existing parking spaces now that would use this entrance right here for a visitor entry into that same space. And then we're proposing to keep the parking area out front as parking for this new facility and keep a good portion of the parking on the side. We have taken out parking, as you may recognize. We've taken out parking in this area right here, removed it altogether. There's approximately 550 parking spaces on the school site right now. With this plan, it would be down to about 450 parking spaces. While nothing's been worked out across the street with any kind of co-use or co-mingling, there are about 210 parking spaces or 220 parking spaces, something like that, across the street that could be used during times when you had a big event or something going on. What I'd like to do is kind of just walk you through the space if I could. I'll try to get into as much detail as I think is practical without going an hour and a half. But just basically walk you through the space, okay? We would still use the drop-off at the front entry. We are proposing to add a covered connector that, and you'll notice we have removed the B building in this particular scheme, okay? And what we've done is we've made a connector from the front there to this portion of the building, which we would like to convert into a park and recreation offices. So the Parks and Recreation could have possibly staff at this location, could operate all the different programs that could possibly go on in this facility. We are proposing to make a connection right here along this front, which is basically a glass wall that would allow people as they enter in to get to the corridor. For those of you who are familiar, and most of you probably are, with the layout of this building, there's a corridor along this side, there's a corridor along this side, but it's very difficult to get back and forth unless you go through the gyms. So what we're proposing to do is add a corridor that connects the two, that runs between the gyms, so that you can get in here and circulate to any side of the complex within the complex. And we are proposing to modify some of these spaces to allow for both visitor and home locker rooms, men and women. We see the opportunity to continue to use these spaces for rental spaces or special activities in terms of the gyms themselves. The one gym we believe holds around 1,200 and the other gym about 400, I believe it is. We still have an access at this location. This is where there's a main access, and we're showing a new walkway connection to the parking lot, renovated parking area out here that could come in this direction. And then in this area right here, in this particular plan, we're showing an 8-lane competitive pool right there. It could possibly house platform diving or diving boards at one end. And it could have covered seating, bleacher seating, actually underneath the existing canopy hallway that's out there right now. It would allow you an opportunity to come in this direction. It would allow Parks and Recreation through this glass wall to monitor this area. We're also showing a splash park. For those that aren't familiar, we call this a zero-depth pool. It might have interactive kind of fountains in a pool kind of situation. It could have a lazy river attached to it or whatever. It also allows us an opportunity to utilize this space as a community room that could be rented out and actually used as a money-making opportunity for Parks and Recreation, with an access here for after hours into the building right here with very little modification. And as Clark mentioned, with some modification and rework of the kitchen and area, that could also service those kinds of events. Further, we're looking at taking this portion of that building right there and using it as kind of a concessions area. So that could service the pool. You could have outdoor dining or outdoor cafe seating outside the pool and that kind of thing. We're proposing two restroom facilities here, kind of an entry in from the parking lot. You can come directly into the pool area here. That's your control point. There would be a berm and a decorative screen wall or fence along this location that creates that whole water park kind of feel right there. As you move around the building, we do have a basketball court and a sand volleyball court. There's two existing tennis courts that most of you have probably parked on before. At that location, we're looking at renovating those courts, adding the appropriate structure necessary to renovate that into two new courts as well. One of the biggest things that you have going for you at this location, obviously, is the stadium. It provides a number of different opportunities for you, and really the sky's kind of the limit when it comes to this. In this particular time, we would propose that you maintain these existing restrooms here, obviously that you maintain the new bleachers and the visitor side, and the existing concession and restroom building at this location. There's an existing concession area right here. One of the things that we would like to try to do is soften the back side of these grandstands. And what we're proposing to do there is really add some landscaping in here, but also to create a two-story tower unit here that would be a new concessions building on the lower level and a new press box on the upper level. Really make that the home side for any kind of events that you might have at this location. The other thing that we're recommending that we consider is a conversion of the field itself. Right now it has a 6-lane track around it, but a conversion of the field itself to a synthetic field. Currently there are no synthetic fields in Davie County. We have seen what a field like that can do from a revenue standpoint. They're not cheap to put in, obviously, but from a revenue standpoint and the ability to play in inclement weather or just in a high-frequency kind of event, that would be a very attractive item to have as well. Another thing that we also heard was, as part of the baseball complex and things, and I'm just trying to walk you around the building right now, is the ability to place in batting cages. There's a large blank wall in the back of this gym right here. There's an exit door here and an exit door here. Between those two exit doors, we have the opportunity for 3 or 4 batting cages. They would be exterior batting cages that could possibly go on at that location, a little bit out of sight, out of mind. In terms of the rest of the facility, we do have a walkway, obviously, that comes to the building here, and one that would circulate here. What we're really trying to do here is create almost an urban park, a Central Park kind of atmosphere, where you would have the ability to walk. One of the things that has come out of our studies the most is the need for outdoor passive walking, greenways, bike trails, those kinds of things. And so this would allow us an opportunity to incorporate a pathway, a meandering pathway, basically all the way around this facility. And I'm just kind of outlining, but you can see this yellow kind of area. Those would be walkways and pathways that people could utilize for that purpose. Coming back into this area, also when you come in the front entry, you could turn left and have an entryway basically into the park itself. We have a nice playground here located at this location, another entry into the park right here. And then you come to this central space right here. We've created a trifold, basically a triplex of Little League baseball fields. These baseball fields are roughly 225-foot fence lines, and it would create in this 4th quadrant a big open green for us with possibly berms. For those of you who don't know what a berm is just a raised mound, a grass raised mound that would allow you to have special events at this location. You could have art in the park, you could have movie night. This would be a covered structure right here, maybe one of those shade type, sail type structures, possibly right there, a berm right there, and then a central, what we're calling War Eagle press box right here. You can kind of see it up here, and this is a little sketch of what a little 2-story structure might be like, where you'd have the press box in the upper portion of it. In the lower portion of it, you'd have these panels that could be raised and lowered, during game time, and they might house your Wi-Fi you know, if you're having a tournament, a baseball tournament or something like that, and you had scores scrolling, or might have a layout of the complex to tell who's at what field, those kinds of things. But that would be located centrally here so that it could service all three of those fields. Could possibly have a vending component in it for healthy snacks and that kind of stuff for the folks out there as well. Most of this area is relatively flat, and one of the things that we wanted to try to do is give it a little bit of relief. So in most of these schemes, we're proposing basically to raise this central area about 4 or 5 feet above the grade around the outside. And what that does, it means is that you will go up very slightly. It would be handicap accessible, but up to this point, that would be the highest point on the site, about 5 foot above normal grade. That would also allow us to do what we call stadium bleachers or stadium seating instead of raised bleachers at the back of each one of these fields. So you're basically tucking the seating into that hillside and allowing the, people to watch from that kind of situation. Really have a great opportunity then for people to sit on the back sides of these berms and watch the games in addition to being on the inside for whatever events going on at that location. We do have a number of picnic shelters. Picnicking and relaxing and having family outing times, reunions, those kinds of things seem to be very important in some of the information feedback we got. We do have some shelters right here. We have one right here as well. And in this particular scheme, they would have grills associated with them, could have horseshoe pits, those kinds of things as well. We're also showing another field back here in this particular scheme. This is a softball/baseball field. Adult softball could be played on this, 315 feet long. We are also showing back here in an area back here possibly there's an existing ROTC climbing tower back there, and so we got the idea of maybe reconstructing or doing possibly a rappelling or climbing tower unit back here. It could also be a jumping off point if you ever did acquire additional properties for a hobby trail, single track mountain biking type outpost, which would be kind of cool. And so we have that as well back there. So that's pretty much the layout on this particular one. I do want to mention too that this is a wonderful opportunity to be able to really energize this part of the community. And I think that's very important in everything that I've heard from the folks over the last year or so. You have opportunities to use the land as leverage for other kinds of monies, federal monies or Park and Recreation Trust Fund, state kind of grants and that kind of thing. You can use the land value towards that to help create some of these facilities. The other thing that you can have is you begin to become more of a regional draw from a standpoint of tournaments, whether that be volleyball tournaments, whether it be basketball events, travel teams, track and field, band events. You can have concerts at this location, especially with the synthetic turf fields. So it really allows you an opportunity for those things, as well as for sponsorship opportunities. You have the opportunity for a corporate sponsor to take over and name possibly one of the gyms or the stadium or this and that. So there's all these opportunities, not to mention the fact that you can rent out some of these things and begin to receive user fee income. But it really provides an opportunity and a catalyst to make this all work. And like we said, our idea and thought is to create a Parks and Recreation Department as part of this. We've seen this work in other cities, Rock Hill being an example. If any of you have been to Rock Hill, you've seen it. I just really think that this is a great opportunity for us. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. I won't spend as much time on the next two, but oh, excuse me, before I do that, one of the things we wanted to do too, just to give you some context for any of those of you that have been up to the North Davie Little League fields, we took the privilege of going ahead and overlaying that existing layout from North Davie over top of what we just did. So if I go back, you can see our layout where we try to give ourselves plenty of room between fields, and you can kind of see how tight the other ones were and kind of in comparison, just so you have a little bit of an idea there. Concept B, once again, overlaid onto the aerial just for context. I'll go ahead and move on to the actual plan. In this particular plan, I mean, you're going to see that they look very similar, and the concepts are very similar at this stage. However, in this particular one, we did remove the B building, but instead of a pool, we have a larger playground, and we actually moved the basketball court into this area. We have 2 volleyball courts here, and the other major difference is that instead of one big softball field, we really tried to create an opportunity for flex space here. If you wanted to do a tournament and wanted to have 5 Little League fields, you could in this particular scheme. It would also allow for a 50-yard by 100-yard practice field. So if it was a football or soccer team that wanted to just have an event, you could do that in this location with the absence of any outfield fence for those 2 particular fields. But other than that, essentially the same concept in design. And once again, concept C. This one is a little more intense. It actually took out the flex space or the big central green and really did a quadruplex here for baseball. It's a little tighter. It's basically your emphasis is on playing baseball and softball. In this case, it does allow for the flex field over here. And this particular scheme left in the B building has a playground area, and this still has your basketball and volleyball here and tennis. And this area in this particular scheme could possibly be utilized for a teen center, game facility, something like that in this particular concept. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Clark, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
I told you he was excited. We're going to talk just real quickly about a construction schedule, and this is not a detailed construction schedule by any means, but all this is providing that the school system approves the plans as you're seeing tonight in a couple of weeks, and that they are successful with the county commissioners in putting this out for bond vote in November, and that indeed passes. So we're assuming that all of that transpires and that a notice to proceed on bid documents, and that could happen sometime around early to mid-November. Of course, Jill will work with us to create a contract that, the contracts are for when things go wrong, and you hope they never do. If you read them, you don't want to sign them, but she'll provide us with one of those, and we'll proceed through the various phases. Design development is just really expanding on what we've developed through schematic design, and since a lot of the aspects of this design are prototypical, we don't envision a lot of changes from what we're showing you tonight, but there'll be a lot of small things, refinements. What does this particular space need for your curriculum, and so on. And then construction documents, where we actually put together the final documents to go out to the contractors. So we see that being completed about May of 2014. Out for bids, we normally like to allow at least a month. It's a large project. We may get complaints from some contractors, can we have another week? So we'll have to play that by ear when we get to that point. And then execute contracts and then get under construction in the summer of 2014. Typically, we see these schools take roughly 2 years, a little more than 2 years in some cases, but 2 years is what we like to schedule at this point. As the schedule becomes more concrete, then we'll have a better idea of what that may be. But We're projecting a 2-year construction time frame with move-in for the school year of 2016 in August. And so I guess your graduating class of 2017 will be the first ones to experience the school at the new location. If for some reason you're not able to convince the county commissioners to put it on the November ballot, if it moves to the spring, basically what you do is you lose an entire school year. So first class starts in 17, finishes in the school year in 18. So 17-18 is fallback if the bond is put off for the spring consideration. I guess this is what everybody's been waiting on, and Wesley didn't want to do it, so I'm going to get to do it. $328,800 square feet, and we're projecting a cost for construction of about $48 million. Soft cost includes fees, includes contingencies, it includes construction testing, furniture, equipment, those sort of things are not included in the construction cost. We're targeting that at 12%. Customarily we would see a school soft costs run more in the range of 15 to 20%. But this is not a new school. This is a replacement school. It's not a totally new school. So you'll be able to reuse some of your existing equipment, some of your furniture, your athletic equipment, your uniforms, some of your technology. So we're not factoring in what it would cost to replace all of that. And ultimately, you'll have to inventory that and decide how much of that goes and how much stays behind. You've got moving costs to get it from your existing site to the new site and get it set up. So all of that is sort of factored into that cost. And that's really at this point is a little bit of a moving target, but that's our best guess based on conversations we've had with staff about what may move to the new campus and what you may need to buy without being specific as to exact items. So far as the administrative space is concerned, you've got about 30,200 square feet in the K building. We're projecting a cost there of about $1.9 million for that. Site demolition of the buildings that we showed to you on the existing plan, probably about $700,000, somewhere in that range, for a total cost of $2.6 million in round figures. Just give you a little background on the cost. If you look at state website for school planning, construction costs for high schools are running somewhere in the 155 to 160 range of square foot. Yours is more in the 146 range, I think. Wesley, you can do the math. It was considerably cheaper from Walkertown, for instance, 4 years ago. Basically, we've escalated those costs forward and expanded the footprint or the square footage is generally how we got that number. We've had that confirmed by a cost estimator we used that we are in the ballpark of where those costs may lie. Customarily, we find that our schools end up a little bit cheaper in relation to what the state average is. The state average, you've got a lot of major metropolitan areas and they have a lot of different constraints. They have construction manager involvement, which adds a cost to the overall construction costs, which at this point we don't have in this county. So there are a number of factors that raise and lower the cost across the state. So this is our best estimate at this point as to what those bid costs might be.
Board, I want to spend a couple minutes just talking about what our next steps could be and trying to frame where we are. So we've heard from our architects, we've heard some plans for a new school and for repurposing. So the new Davie County High School projected cost is $53,760,000. That includes the stadium and everything that we talked about. Repurposing the existing campus, I want to spend just a second on this and share with you some of the conversations and recommendations that staff would have related to this. You can see the cost that Clark just outlined on the screen there. What we would recommend is that when this site were vacated and students were moved out, that we would look at this piece of property board and, let's go back here, excuse me, can't click. We would look at this piece of property and pretty much draw a rectangle around this K building. And we would deed the remaining property, the remaining approximately 30 acres on this site. It's about a 33-acre site. We would deed that back over to the county. The county could then, that would be our recommendation to the board. You all would have to decide that. The county could then immediately use that as a match for grants, that donation of the property. Scott gave us a lot of great ideas about how that property could be used in the future. What we have in the projected cost is repurposing the K building and then demoing the buildings that Clark identified there that are hashed on the screen and grading all of that area so that the fields could be constructed. I feel like the board needs to carefully understand that the decision of what fields are there, what activities are there, what build out is there is really not within our decision-making authority whatsoever. What we've done is facilitated a process to bring people together to gather those ideas, and then Scott and the Recreational Master Planning Committee within the community will have to decide what parts and pieces they would want to build out in the future. And if we deeded the remaining property over, that decision would be then left up to the county of Davie as to how you would do that. So there'd be some big benefits to the county of us donating that remaining property for dedicated recreational use. But you can see clearly here that we do not have any type of purpose of that being a school site or students on that campus. Scott mentioned it's also an incredible opportunity for private donors to become involved and help us to really impact economic development and have something for our community. There are a couple other things that I would mention. Again, it's not our purview to decide how you would fund those fields or you would fund recreation in Davie County, but some things that could be considered. One might be a recreation bond. So if the voters wanted to vote on a recreation bond, the commissioners could use that as a tool to fund the build out of the fields and the other recreational activities that Scott outlined. Another consideration might be for the community to consider a 1/4-cent sales tax dedicated toward recreation usage. Again, those are things that are possibilities. I really believe if we wanted a facility like this in our county and we felt like it would benefit people of all ages and benefit the community economically, that we could work together to do that, but we are not in a position to make those kind of recommendations from a school board perspective. So what I want to do now is kind of take us where we are as a board and how this funding and construction could take place. And I'm just going to lay out a few scenarios. Let's go back and look at what our existing resources are. During this last budget, the Board of Education set aside $475,000 for HVAC renovations in the K building. So we've set aside that amount of money already that could go toward this project. In the 2011-12 budget year, we agreed to set aside $1 million of our lottery money toward addressing the high school issues. So we've dedicated that lottery money toward solving the high school issues. There's $1 million as well. I've talked with Ms. Spink, and our lottery revenues have fluctuated over the past several years. I heard our governor talk last week about possibly allowing lottery monies to be used for technology in the future, so I think there may be some flexibility with lottery in the future. I hope that the state will really go back and analyze how lottery monies are used and how much money and what percentage of that is actually going back to school systems. So by the time the school were to open in 2016, staff would recommend that we would take another $525,000 of our lottery money to put toward this project. So not only would I recommend the board sustain our commitment of these resources we've already identified in past budgets towards solving the high school issue, but I would encourage the board to consider expanding that commitment by $525,000 in lottery. So that would bring the board's commitment to $2 million. That would offset some of the tax burden for this project. We also know that in previous budgets, the Board of County Commissioners have committed up to $5 million for addressing the high school issue. We went through a process of applying for qualified school construction bonds. We know that $5 million would have to be borrowed, but they've committed in the past that that $5 million could be borrowed without any additional tax burden on the people of Davie County. So if the Board of Commissioners were to maintain that commitment of solving the high school issue with $5 million in borrowed funds, we could use $3 million in zero interest school bonds, then that could take our total commitment to this project of reducing the tax burden by $7 million. So if we go back and put those numbers together, the new school, repurposing, add those two together, it's $56,370. If we use the current revenue, and again, this is contingent upon the commissioners maintaining that commitment to addressing the high school, and that would again be up to them, then we're looking at a potential school bond request of just over $49 million. So that's a summary of how we might look at options for revenue and framing this conversation. There are a couple other things that I would want us to look at and consider. When you look at, again, our lottery funds, they have fluctuated. And there are some school districts in North Carolina who commit every dime that the school district gets in lottery funds to debt service toward buildings. Ms. Spink and I have talked about that, our Chief Financial Officer. We don't feel like that's a good idea because that fund does fluctuate. And we have depended on some of those funds for roof projects and other capital improvement projects. But in looking at the revenue and looking at our needs, Ms. Spink and I would feel comfortable recommending to the board that we set aside $200,000 each year out of North Carolina lottery funds allocated to Davie County for debt service for a new school. So that's another way to reduce the tax burden on a project like this if we were to set aside that money. Looking a little farther out, in 2016, if the new school were open at that point in time, we would begin the renovations of K Building, the demo of the oldest buildings on campus, and the grading for future recreational use. That process would take about 6 to 8 months to complete. And once that 6 to 8 months was complete, we would vacate the Cherry Street office and move all of our administrative staff into that area. And we would recommend that the board consider deeding that property back to the county. That property could then be sold. The proceeds of that sale could go toward the repurposing of that building or back toward the project. The current tax value of the Cherry Street office is just over, well, right at $585,000. So again, that would be up to us communicating and making agreement with the county commissioner. That would be another potential revenue source. And the last thing I'll mention has been talked about quite a bit as an option. And again, it is outside the responsibility of the Board of Education to make this decision, but it's debt roll-off. And we have in Davie County several projects. The building that we're in right now is part of debt service for Davie County. There were school construction bonds in the past. And by the time the school opened in June 2016, $698,000 in annual debt service will roll off the books. Again, it's out of our purview here, but if the commissioners were to choose to use that debt service that is already part of the annual budget of Davie County toward school construction, along with the $200,000 from the Board of Education, you're looking at offsetting the annual debt on this project by $900,000 in revenue. So these are a couple options. Again, out of our realm, because in North Carolina, unlike 90% of the school districts across America, you as a Board of Education do not have taxing authority. In North Carolina, the legislature a long time ago delegated the responsibility of funding school construction and school maintenance facilities to boards of county commissioners. So it would be up to them as to how they would decide to fund this project and how they would determine debt service. So next steps, these would be my recommendations for our next steps. I would ask the board to take tonight what you have heard and consider the future of our school district. You've been through a lot of these conversations as a board. You've been part of our strategic planning committee. You hear what the things that you hear out in our community as the needs of the school district. I would ask you to come to our March 5th meeting prepared to take action on what's been presented tonight, discuss it, further ask questions. Our architects will be available at that meeting. If approval is reached on the March 5th meeting, I would recommend that you request a special called meeting with the Board of County Commissioners by the end of March. You saw the timeline that Clark laid out. If this were to be a request to be on the November ballot, the Board of Commissioners would need to have adequate time to request the Board of Elections call that election. There is an election scheduled in November for municipal election. So this would give the commissioners plenty of time to make a decision on having that on the November ballot. And as Clark mentioned a few minutes ago, if the bond referendum were on the November 2013 ballot and it's approved, the new school could be open for the 2016-17 school year. That's the class of 2017 would be the first graduating class from the new high school. Those will be freshmen, rising freshmen this next school year. If we delayed the bond vote into the following year, 2014, that would delay opening the school another year to the fall of 2017. Mr. Wallace does some incredible things, but I would not want to ask him and our staff to move an entire high school in the middle of a school year. That is a mammoth task and would just not be feasible from an operational perspective. So folks, we are at a crossroads in our history. We don't build a high school very often. One new high school for all students. I didn't mean for that to be funny. That's just, this is a huge investment for our community. This is a significant investment in our community. The high school that we have our students in today have served this community well. By the time this new school were to open, it would be 60 years old, and it would have served our community extremely well. But as staff, we recommend that you could strongly consider the recommendations from our architect, because they have listened to both the staff, students, our parents, and community. And one new high school for all students in Davie County has been identified as a need. And I want to thank Walter Robbs Callahan Pierce and our architects for listening to the needs of our students and community and for designing a solution. And as I preface my comments tonight, I really hope that as a community, we can stop focusing on the problem and come together and implement a solution. So at this point in time, we can pull the lights back up, and I would turn it back over to Chairman Owens, and you can, as a board, ask our architects or Mr. Miller any of the questions you'd like to consider.
Dr. Hartness, and thank you too for the presentation. And it was exciting to see the repurposing. I feel for the first time after this presentation, Davie County can become a destination for others to come back to us and to keep our families here in our county. Thank you for the wonderful vision that you took everyone's ideas and put it down on paper for us layman people to see. At this time, I've noticed our board was writing down very quickly throughout. If anyone, it's hard to see y'all, so if there's anyone who has any questions of Clark or Wesley or Scott, now's the time.
Chairman Owens, I've got several questions, and I'll first say to Dr. Hartness, if we could get the PowerPoint presentation of how we would pay for this school to the board, so we could look at it and have some time to study it prior to our March, is it 5th or 6th? March 5th meeting.
I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah, I'd like to have that. I got a few questions for the architects. I can ask them all, and maybe if you can remember them, I probably couldn't, but they're not real, nothing really in
Are they
detail.
easy?
Well, they're fairly easy, yeah. I noticed, one thing that I noticed that the CTE building, and maybe I just don't understand it looking at it, it looked like the CTE building was sitting off to the back of the property, and it was not connected in any way to the rest of the building, and I just wondered, was that, maybe I didn't see it wrong, or?
It is a separate building currently. It's not something that we would normally encompass within the main building, just because of the type spaces. Those spaces are high volume spaces, and we've got, you know, defined floor levels for your typical classroom wing, so you need taller spaces for automotive lifts in the automotive area, and for carpentry shops if you're building a house or whatever you may build. You know, a number of programs that we see, like in Forsyth, you know, they build houses for habitat.
Well, I noticed that.
It could be connected. There could be.
I'm not saying maybe by at least a walkway. I didn't even see that. I
Yes.
mean, you know, you got the weather conditions and
Right.
things like that. That's, you know, that's fairly simple. That was one question I had. The other question, of course, I think this is on the minds of a lot of folks since I believe it was December the 14th up in Connecticut. But you know, you showed the one entrance into the school, and I'm sure code would require a certain amount of exits, you know, where they could evacuate.
You know, there are a number of entrances and exit points around the building,
Yeah.
but, you know, what we find in most schools these days is that once the class bell rings, the doors are locked down.
Yeah.
And you come in the front entry, that door would remain open typically, but in this scheme, you have to come in through the vestibule. You don't get into the main building without at least going through and encountering administrative staff. You know, that can be done, you know, we've worked on prisons. That can be done electromechanically. You can lock them all down remotely if you want to go to that extreme.
Well, I understand that, but all of them are not on the ground floor. So you got second story, you got third story. You know, have you got?
The egress requirements.
Yeah, how would you? I mean, I'm sure the
second and
statute would, you know, code would require some type of evacuation plan.
Right. The second and third floors, the exiting requirements are through the stair towers at the end of the wing, and there are two in the center location. So that's typically what you do on multi-story buildings. There is an elevator in the building, but that's primarily for staff to move equipment around or for a handicapped student or staff member.
Yeah, and I'd like to say too that though there's control getting into the building, you can always, all of the exits, you still can get out.
Yeah, well, I understand that.
And it's
I
a
just,
matter of monitoring. I mean, they can monitor those doors.
Yeah,
as
well, I knew there'd be evacuation doors and things like that. I guess this question should be fairly easy. The wrestling room, I think,
Yep.
it is there.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you know the square footage of that?
3,000 square feet.
3,000. Okay. And I believe it was Mr. Wallace we were talking to. I was talking to down at maybe when we were at Rocky River. I noticed you got a baseball field there. Is that just a practice field, or would that be?
Full baseball.
I know Mr. Wallace and I talked about, you know, Rich Park. So
Yeah, it would be a full baseball field. You could, you know, that would be really administrative or a system decision. We heard the same comments that I think you're referring to as Rich Park. It has a history to it. You may want to just use the new facility at the new school as a practice facility, which you don't have on campus now, and still play your games over at Rich Park. That's up to you, but it could be played on campus if that was your choice.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I had a couple of questions. First off, I want to thank you. You did just a beautiful presentation, and I really appreciate all that you did after we toured all the schools and took the input from, you know, the things we were concerned about and presented such a great plan. My question was band, drama, and chorus, and maybe I missed it, maybe I didn't see those rooms and the space and where that?
You've got, basically you've got the band, the courses here. We tried to locate those performing arts around the auditorium space. So you've got your course here, you've got your band located there. In between, you've got practice rooms, there's sound booth practice rooms in here, offices that have access to both sides of that as well for staff, storage, instrument storage here and there. Here's your arts. There are 3 art classrooms here. Your dance is located right there.
And what was the square foot on the band room again?
The band square footage is, get my numbers. I think it's,
I just know that was a question that we've been asked, so.
yes, I've got you. Here you go. It is, the band is 2,500 square feet, and the dance is 1,500 square feet.
As a follow-up from Carol, where is the dock for the band to move equipment out? I didn't see that.
Well, typically in our designs, we don't have a working dock, but we say one is raised. But access to the entire performing arts area is right here. So through this door, you can get access in and come through, and you have access into the stage of the auditorium. So if there's a roll-up door along here, and also there's storage here with the prop storage with the roll-up doors, so that as you bring equipment or stage scenes in, you come through this door and it's right there. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Many of the questions that I had prepped coming in tonight were answered during your presentation, but I do have a couple that I'd like to bring up or ask. Can you give us, and the board may have been provided this numbers, do you know what the building cost for the 3 schools that we visited were? They're similar size schools. Do you know what the total cost was for each of those 3?
You're speaking of Reagan, the Career Center, and Walkertown, or are you also including the Charlotte school?
Reagan, Walkertown, and Charlotte.
I've got those figures on Charlotte. Wesley can give you the, I'll get them, but he can give you the figures on the 3 schools that we were involved with. I think, Walkertown was, I believe, 29.8 for about 242 to 45,000 square feet. Reagan, when it was built, which is, gosh, 7, 8, 9 years ago now, it was about 19 million. And Career Center, Wesley will have to answer that. I think the main building, I want to say, was about 22 in round figures, and then the Votech building where you had the auto shops and so forth to the north of there in a separate building again. Wesley, you know what?
Somewhere, I think it was somewhere in the range of about, I think it was somewhere in the range of about 8 million.
So the Career Center campus in round figures about 30 million.
Okay.
Rocky River, I think, was around 54 million. Dr. Hartness, didn't we get an email from Tom Balky on that? You and
I've got those.
I do have some information on that I could share with the board.
I believe it was close to that.
And I think I would say, and I don't want to interrupt here, and I'll get off and let Paul finish, but I just to make a point of clarification, the Walkertown plan, or the Walkertown school, and the Reagan school doesn't have the same kind of programming that we're talking about here. We're talking about a whole lot more programming here. I mean, we're talking about CTE classes, different types of programming. I just want to make that point of clarification.
Right. Forsyth County does not provide generally the CTE curriculum at their high schools. That's provided at the Career Center. They provide some, but the bulk of them, the more I don't know, the auto tech and carpentry and auto body collision, welding, that sort of thing. They're provided at the Career Center. You know, some of their culinary arts, their cosmetology courses, all of those sort of things are provided at the Career Center. The facility in Charlotte, likewise, it did not provide CTE courses either. The cost that we have from school planning, actually there are two schools. We went to the Min Hill School. I think we've been referring to it, Rocky River, but Min Hill School was bid in April of '08, and it was bid at a cost of $42,920,703. And the square footage was 277,000. So the per square foot cost was $154.65. So 8 years ago, or excuse me, in '08, you know, getting on towards 5 years ago, it was more than we're projecting your building will cost at this point. There was also another reuse of that same school that was bid about 2.5 weeks later, and it was at $168.77. But the big difference was some of the site cost associated, and I don't know anything about that school other than just what I can see on the chart from school planning.
If I can, I'd like to continue on. Past biology teacher there, you said in the new building that there were 12 science area rooms with some resource areas attached. You and I talked when we were down at the school, at the high school during one of the planning and questioning days. Those resource centers or rooms are so that two adjoining classrooms can share, and for prep, is that what you were talking about,
yes,
resource?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we mentioned in the presentation resource rooms, and resource rooms in general are not necessarily science related. They can be, but they were for smaller, you know, group study, specialized needs, and that sort of thing. But yes, the room that you're talking about between the two science labs, for instance, is a prep room. So
it's some teacher space.
So that's the teacher space. Generally, there's room in there for some storage, solvent storage. You have a refrigerator in there, and casework cabinets and wardrobe storage.
HVAC, all those conditions. One of the challenges at this current site is when it was built, it was warm in the winter and supposedly warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Are there individual kinds of controls where if there is somebody in one area, you don't have to heat up the whole building just for a smaller section? Those kinds of things, can you give me some words on that?
Generally, each classroom space would have its own unit, and the system that we typically see being used, I think y'all may differ some in this county, and that's one of those refinements we'd have to make with Mr. Spielman. We see the water source heat pump system being the most prevalent system that most schools are using. There's a 4-pipe system. That's what Reagan had. It does allow heating and cooling seasonably, but typically either one of those systems would have their own fan kill unit, so you could at some point have temperature control within that room. However, that's not a good thing from a school standpoint to have a lot of individualized control, because you're going to have some people that want to run it up to 80 degrees and some people want it 60. So most schools, and this one as well, would have, you know, DDC control system, and that's a digital control system that allows someone like Mr. Spielman to sit back there in his office over there across from the high school in the maintenance, and he can, by just program in a laptop computer, he can see every room in there and tell, you know, what the temperature is or if there's a problem. He can take that home with him, and he can, you know, if he's on call 24 hours a day, he would be able to see at his home if there's a problem at the school in terms of one of the mechanical systems. So, you know, that's pretty typical in school construction these days, to have that control. But normally, the set points would be set and those type of controls so that you don't have a wide range of temperature extremes. teacher might be able to control the temperature range within, as some of our weather forecasters locally, within 3 degrees either way.
Okay, thank you. A lot of the questions and concerns that are in my mind, and I think on some other folks as well, there was, over the last several years, there's been some key points that people believe are deficiencies in our current site. So coming to the table with a presentation and working out issues on a potential new site that eliminated the problems and challenges at the current. So my questions are that's where I'm coming from with this. The lab spaces, biology, we did that. Barbara, I think, or Carol asked about the arts, the chorus, the band, those rooms. One of my questions was access for the band to get their instruments that they go to the field with for a ball game. Auto tech. Visited with Mr. Wallace a couple of years ago, and one of the issues at the current school is that a lot of students wanted to take auto tech courses but were turned away because of limitations of space. We'll figure out the teachers. If we have the space, then more people could have access to the course. What can you, we see the building and we see rooms, but can you sort of give me an interior idea of what?
Yeah, Wesley can move the cursor around, he'll chime in, but that area along the back side there is the auto tech area. Currently, I believe you have 3 lifts or 3 bays in your existing facility. This doubles that. So you have 6 bays in this facility. And there's an alignment pit, front end alignment pit as well.
Okay, that was the answer. We can move on. Thank you. I remember hearing conversation about some of the visits to other facilities, and in one facility they liked a lot of these things, they didn't like that, they liked this, so ours is sort of a melding of the things we like the most. Our staff, when questioned, what kind of floor did they say they wanted on the floor? Classroom floors, hallway floors.
I don't think, I don't think they asked or chimed in
Maybe,
on
excuse
that.
me, instead of the staff, what the board members and the people that went on the tours noticed the flooring.
Yeah, as Wesley, I think, mentioned, all of the circulation corridors, the dining area, the main spines between the core area, all of that is terrazzo currently, and that's typically what they liked and what, it's not?
No, this is VCT.
No, no, it's not VCT.
It's not.
Now, the classrooms typically would be VCT. A few years ago, there was a lot of carpet in classrooms, and you had a lot of environmental issues, so forth. A lot of school systems have gotten away from the carpet in their schools. The primary location that you might see some carpet would be in the office areas and the media center. Some are even getting away from large areas of carpet in the office area and just confine it to individual offices, but the teacher workroom, the lounge, circulation areas within the admin area could be vinyl tile if that's your choice.
So I think as a consensus, most persons like the terrazzo in the main corridors, and they like the VCT in the classrooms.
Okay. Another group that asked me to bring up some points, the locker rooms for home and visiting, say football, for example, are up there at the top, and the football stadium is down here in the left. They'll be tired by the time they get to the game.
This area shape.
It's good conditioning. As Wesley mentioned, there is a placeholder at the football stadium area for a field house, and we've done some very preliminary sketches of what that might be. Right now, we're looking at potentially about a 12,000 square foot building. What our plan would be to go ahead and design that building as part of this project, included in the bids as an alternate. So if we get great bids, you have the choice as a school board whether or not you want to go ahead and accept the field house.
I would love to see that in that, at least as an option or a.
Currently, the locker rooms that are in the bid are large enough to accommodate the number of per persons for a sports team that we've been talking with Mr. Wallace.
I mean, I don't remember the exact number, but it's around 130, 132, 136, somewhere in that.
For visitor and.
In that range. The one we saw at Min Hill, the number of you saw, was just a a very small field house, and it wouldn't be anywhere near sufficient for your needs. I think there were maybe room for 45 or so lockers in each one. It was very cramped. There's no coaching space in there for halftime. You're almost better staying outside. You can use it to go to the toilet, and that's about all it was good for, but it's very small. If you're going to have a functioning field house for halftime, it needs to accommodate the whole team.
I'm still on a roll, but I see I've got somebody that wants to jump in here.
Okay.
I was just wanting to say something. I found that email about Rocky River and Huff, and it was 42.9 and 43.5, and then it said Charlotte Mecklenburg schools that had to tell us why they went up to 53 and 58. But I will say this, especially Walkertown, the design and the construction was by far the best, in my opinion, of the three schools we toured. This Rocky River was, it's just.
Well, one thing to talk about finishes, the finishes, as you recall, they were mostly bare concrete in the main corridor circulation areas. In some cases, they were stained concrete.
Well, the quality was lacking.
Yeah, and it could have been a lead school, or it could have been just a way to save some cost. If it was a lead school, a lot of times you may leave some of those finishes off as opposed to putting down vinyl tile or ceilings or whatever. There's a lot of reasons, and we're not privy to the whys and wherefores of the schools are designed certain ways, but I agree most people prefer terrazzo. And one thing that we're doing with terrazzo in most systems now is, for years, maintenance staff have treated them just like vinyl tile in terms of how they maintain them. They strip them in the summer and put 3 coats of wax on them. It may as well be vinyl tile. What we're doing now is polishing those floors to about a 3,000 grit, which really you don't have to do anything other than just mop it down every day, keep the dust off.
Spoke to some coaches who, and you answered part of these questions about the athletic and gym, not only just athletics, but the physical education part of the school system too. Locker rooms, showers, weight rooms. The coaches came and made comments to you about what their wants and wishes were for that. How square footage wise, I guess, how much difference is what is there at the school now compared to what is proposed in the new? Can you do square footage of just that area?
You mean comparing the existing high school locker areas to what we have now? I don't think we're prepared to do that. I don't think we have the square footage of the existing locker rooms, but the locker rooms are sufficient to handle all your team sports, the largest being the football teams, and the PE locker rooms are certainly large enough to handle. I don't know if we normally design them for 3 courses or 3 classrooms at a time. This may actually be designed for 4. We'd have to get back to you on that specifically.
Designated wrestling practice room that could be a utility of some other during not during wrestling time. Media center square foot in the current facility, I believe you said was 7,000 square feet.
It's a little over 7,000.
What is it in the new?
1,250.
12,500.
12,500.
Yep. Normally media centers, you figure 4 to 6 square feet per student. So this is a little on the high side of that range. It's closer to the 6.
Can you turn your screen and get back to the aerial view of the full plant? There you go. Parking for baseball and softball field that's farthest away from the stadium. There you go. Parking for people that come to a baseball game.
There'd be some parking along here, but most of the major parking would still be in this area as well as this area and this area.
I mean, that's one of those site refinements. We didn't have a lot of discussion about the baseball field in terms of how many spectators it typically draws. So I think, I've not actually been down to that field, but I don't think it's much of a parking. Is it even asphalt or is it gravel? So I think, that would have to be improved somewhat. My understanding is basically all of that property back there is under a grant situation, and that sort of goes hand in hand, I think, with what may happen in repurposing the existing high school site. You simply could trade the grant that's in place there for the grant to the new site. But basically, it's a joint community school use is what we're envisioning there, just improving that field. But we'd certainly want to look at improving that parking lot and providing as nearly as possible as space would allow in that area sufficient parking. I wouldn't want to walk from this parking all the way down to a baseball game.
One more, if you can flip to the aerial view, options A, B, and C for the repurposing. Potential repurposing. Get a different one. Okay, there you go. The sort of a square area at the top of the screen that is on the school property now, but there are some geography and topography problems back there. Is that rectangular piece of land usable for anything that you can imagine?
Imagine.
Amphitheater?
Yeah, our imagination can take us to a lot of spots. I think right now, what we're sort of envisioning is that, and Scott can chime in, he sort of mentioned it earlier, in this scheme, there's maybe a way to have some idea of climbing or...
Yeah, really at that location, you're exactly right. The terrain starts to fall off pretty rapidly from about where that box starts, up against the majority, the major part of the site. Really, there's a couple of options there. One of the things that you could do is you could do another picnic shelter type thing that would be more situated rustic. In a rustic and might have an overlook kind of element to it, which could be a rentable kind of opportunity there. You could do something that's a little more terrain friendly, like the climbing tower might have a zip line or a climbing rope or something like that comes off of it. Or it could also be used, although that area is not probably large enough to handle a single track mountain biking course by itself, it could possibly, if acquisition of the remainder of that land, which is also very steep in that area, that's not going to be able to be used for much else. If the acquisition of that property came along in the future, you could possibly use it for some kind of event like that.
Okay, I think I've got this narrowed down to two final questions. Can you use your pointer and based on that curve around the farthest up the page baseball field, somewhere on that note, go to your left, the small field.
Oh, the small field? Over here?
Now to the right. That's it. That one. Somewhere on that curve around the outfield of that, so there's a road that's going around the outside, there is our current boiler room.
Yes, that's right.
Point to where the boiler room is.
Yeah, actually there's an area about right in here somewhere it's situated. There's a cut, what we call a cut, or a low area that comes up in here, and that boiler actually sits down in probably 20 to 25 feet deep down in there. Boiler is not currently used. It's old. It hasn't been used for quite some time. We talked about this a little bit, that the majority of the terrain on the entire site, it works very well for this kind of use. That's one area right there that would have to be dealt with in terms of filled in order to accommodate the plan that we're showing.
Would that be a possible site for an outside drama event kind of thing? What do you call
that's possible, like an amphitheater kind of element.
Right.
That is possible. It does come up into here. The upper part of it, or this part of it, would have to be dealt with. But it's not to say that element right there cannot house something like that as well. Okay. We do have a restroom component located right there. Maybe failed to mention all of those little elements, but there's a restroom component there. There's a picnic shelter right there. There's a concession building in this scheme right here. So yeah, that could possibly be an option at that location.
Unless I go crazy, I got one more. For the projected potential new Davie High School. What are the numbers, Clint? Built, designed for 1,800 students with a core of 2,000. Core meaning total population on the site at any one workday time.
Well, the 18 is the initial population, and it has capacity within those core areas. We design it to be able to accommodate down the road up to 2,000. Yes, okay. At any one time, 2,000.
All right. For this question, can I just stay stuck on either one, 1,800 or 2,000? That whichever number you want to use. What is your best, but with all your experience with other school building projects, what is the best number of acres that is needed for that property, for that amount of students? I know that my question's not coming out right. If you squish it all together and build it up, you don't need as much acreage.
Yeah, I think somewhere, you've got 53 acres there now. We're using some space, some of the property of the middle school site for the football field primarily. So I think you've got in excess of 60 acres, and that's pretty typical of what we see.
Does the middle school, here I got another question, sorry. Does the middle school lose anything with the high school being built there?
No, not really.
Where the stadium is?
It keeps its football stadium. You get an enhanced softball field there, and that's the main difference. There's already 4 tennis courts that were built there for the middle school recently, and we see a joint use of that. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense to us to duplicate facilities when you have, 2 schools there that closely together. So, 8 tennis courts, I think it really takes 6 as a minimum for competition.
I was a biology teacher, not a math, so I got one more question. Wetlands, we just read, or last month at the school board meeting, we talked about a possible situation with wetlands on that property being a problem. And then in the paper recently, there's a wetland thing that has messed up a development of a complex here in the community as well. Do you see that being a problem? Anything real or supposed or guessed?
I would have to defer to John Gray on that, but I know there are some areas. Let's go get that back to there are some areas, if you saw off to the left of the main entrance drive and the blue, which is a creek that sort of runs down there, I would suspect that those are wetland areas, and you see that we're not proposing any development in those areas. Most any school site that we encounter these days are going to have some challenges, and many times they have to deal with wetlands. On the Walkertown site, same thing. We had a large area of the site that was wetlands. We had to stay out of that in terms of development. If we got into it, we have to mitigate the infringement onto those areas. So what you see down there is what we would try and stay out of. Just upstream from that, there's an area that's not been talked about, but that's a pond that would basically be a construction pond, I think, at this point, a retention pond. We didn't color it blue because ultimately it won't be there. At least we don't think it is after construction. DENR regulations change all the time, so if you got any friends in Raleigh, see if you can get them to lighten up, because politically, in my mind, it's gotten out of hand. But.
Yeah, well, Paul, one thing I will say is that the plan that you see here is, as far as the parking, as far as a lot of the impervious surface or pervious surface is concerned, is very closely aligned to what was the last Davie project, which had gone through that process of having reviews from the various state levels. So I think for the most part, as far as the wetlands is concerned, we've stayed out of the areas, we've stayed in the same spot pretty much that the last plan, which had been approved, was. So to our knowledge, we should be in good shape.
Well, it's good that you could get all the components that were asked to try to get in there and work around that so that agriculture, horticulture, and science classes can use that.
Sure.
That's good.
Sure.
You plan for that, right?
Well, sure.
One thing that we failed to mention on the parking, surprised it hasn't been brought up yet. I think Scott said there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 550, 575 spaces on the existing campus. There are 574 in the main student parking lot currently. The parking lot over next to the football stadium, I believe it's 180. There are roughly 21 or so over around the tennis courts. The staff visitors parking 234. And then around the back on the perimeter road, I think there's 21 or so where Wesley's pointing, and somewhere in that same vicinity of spaces behind the Votech area. And then I believe there's 25 situated along the bus parking for bus drivers or staff. So all together, if my math is correct from when I worked it out earlier, I think there are 1,081 spaces on that site designated as parking, and in an event, the bus parking can handle between 120 and 150 more, so you have about 1,200 parking space potential on that site.
I've got to the point of, Paul had a question about those wetlands, just from where we were back in 09 and 10, being involved in that. You're correct in that the wetlands areas, I think, that were identified through testing was the area that, and I don't know necessarily that it was all of that area delineated in blue, but there was an area in that vicinity that was delineated as wetlands, yeah, that was stayed away from that, and that was the only wetlands that were delineated on that property, a very small percentage of the total for a site that size. And I don't know what the norm, Scott could speak to the norm, but and it really doesn't matter. But on that particular property, from my perspective, it's a very small size.
And there are different classifications of wetlands, intermittent streams, perennial streams, right, and I don't know specifically how those may be classified in the regulations that limit the impact depending on which one of those are involved. And
I'm not, honestly, most of the questions have been asked that I can think of or imagine, but I would like to say thank you to everyone involved, and I'm honestly excited about the process that was the steps that were taken, let me say that, to lead to this. All the people that were involved, I think that's very important, and I just would like to thank you guys for that. And if I have some questions, I'll forward them through the superintendent. Let me back up. I have one thing. One thing that we haven't touched on is for expansion of classroom space. And I'm assuming, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming there's an area there in that
right.
area.
Wesley mentioned it sort of in passing, but there's a large area here that would accommodate basically a duplication of this end of the tower.
Okay.
And that could either be 1 story, 2 stories, 3 stories. Could also be connected to the main classroom building with an enclosed connector corridor.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And I think that's all I have. But I'm really glad at the way this thing has unfolded, honestly, and all the people that have been involved in developing this. Thank you.
One other question. Certainly, with I-40 being there and 158 being there, once you get the traffic out to there, it's going to disperse quickly. What about have you talked to DOT about the 2 lanes from 40 into the school? I mean, are we going to have to do anything there, or?
We have not talked to them. The plan that was put in place 3 years ago when this site was designed really has not changed as far as the access points onto the site are concerned, and DOT had approved and was involved with that design at the time. So I think it's kind of hard to see, but there's some taper lanes and turn lanes and so forth into the site, but so far as any widening from 40 all the way out to here, that's not envisioned at this point. We would think, certainly you don't have the corporate citizens out there that you do at your current site, so you're not fighting that traffic when the plant's let out. You do have the middle school, but there'd be staggered start times as we understand it, so the middle school traffic wouldn't necessarily conflict with the high school traffic. There are two, if you let the bus riders go a little early, then some of the students could even float, because there are connector drives between, I don't know if you can see them, they're sort of hard to pick up, but there's one down here, and then I think there's one up here. They're connector drives that are gated, and you can simply, when the buses are gone, if you want to let some of the students that are going north up Farmington Road go out the bus drive, then they can, and the ones that are going south towards the interstate can continue to go out through the main entrance drive. There's also the possibility of some of those, some of the staff, for instance, or parents that are, pick up students that could come and circulate behind the football field and come out through the middle school so that they're not tied into the students. It wasn't really, it's not necessarily envisioned to work that way, but it can work that way. I think anytime you deal with schools, it doesn't matter what size site you have, traffic's always an issue, both internally and externally. And, there's probably going to have to be some staff commitment at those heavy traffic times to help direct traffic where they're circulating back and forth through the parking lot, which is something that can happen here for parent pickup along the main staff area. If you don't, it's a pretty long entrance drive into there. That may accommodate, all the parents. The times that I've been out to the existing middle school in the morning, I've not seen that to be all that big a problem with parents, but maybe I just wasn't there at the right time.
Well, I think the point that you made earlier is, the other plan was properly vetted and permitted through NCDOT. So I think we've kind of been down that road to a point.
There's, Scott, in his excitement, drew a little drop-off lane there at the football stadium, and we made that change ourselves to just show it as walkway because we knew that we couldn't sell that as something that DOT had approved. If that'd be a great idea for emergency or whatever, if you want to drop someone off there, but practically to have people pull up and drop students off or pick up there probably wouldn't make much sense on Farmington Road.
I found another one. The either south or east end of the high school football field, there's a little red, looks like a red roof of a building. What is that right there?
That's concession toilets.
Okay, so those toilets could be used by the tennis courts.
Yes.
All right. The orientation of the middle school field is more east-west, and the high school is north-south. Have you ever heard anything from any coach about which direction the football field should be pointing?
North-south is preferred. Middle school fields, I think a lot of times not a lot of attention. It's a daytime game.
Thank you. But I am not talking.
Clint or Wendy, do you have any questions? I know we've asked a lot.
Well, I had some questions, but I think Paul just about got them all answered. Thank you, Paul. But I do want to say thank you. And, one thing that, as you were going through the repurposing plan, of course, I was sitting here thinking, wow, I'm sure there were a lot of folks in the audience and they're thinking, well, yeah, that'll be nice. But when you really look at the opportunity for so many people in our community, as far as the YMCA possibly being the ones to help with that pool facility, or, it could be really huge for us, right? And I think about how successful Twin City Soccer Park has been as far as that corporate sponsorship, having something very similar to that in Moxville. So I appreciate you all presenting it in the way that you did, because it could be, it's real vision. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure you get the orange right on that wall.
That's the only comment he has.
It's pretty close to Clemson orange, I think.
I don't know who's holding those color codes, but just make sure that, that simply, whenever it got to that slide, Really, I have to say, I almost got emotional to see that wall and to see that Davie County High School, one high school that it's just, I don't know, something about that wall just really struck me. And so, thank you again for like Chad said, the process. I mean, this wasn't just dreamt up in an office somewhere. So thank you for the process and everyone that's been involved in both facilities. Just thank you. So.
Thank you.
Clark, can I just ask one other question, please? I agree with Clint. I got emotional over the wall, too. And I can kind of see the entrance down there. Is there like a median in the middle where, and that does seem like a long drive, and I'm not, you know, I don't know how long that is up to the school, but will there be sufficient lightings, you know what I'm saying, where we could hang? I know in my grandson's school, they have their flags hanging off of the lighting with all their school colors off, that type of entrance.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, the parking lot is, I couldn't point them out because it's not a construction drawing, but when it was designed the first time, you know, there are a number of lights in the parking lot. The parking lots will be well lit.
Thank you. And again, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
This has been a fantastic evening. The vision that you have shared with us and the vision that the staff and faculty and the community shared shows what you can do when y'all put your heads together. It's really, really great. As we know as a board, our next step is March the 5th, and we will need to take some action, so we need to think and talk among ourselves and listen to our community. Also, if you have any questions, please refer those to Dr. Hartness. I know we may have some more, but if you'll refer those questions to him. And I need a motion to adjourn, but before that, I want to say thank you to each of you who stayed through the whole entire presentation. Thank you so much and for being here. So I need a motion to adjourn. Clint made the motion and Paul has seconded. All in favor? 7-0. Thank you.